escucha lejano, cuentan al sur, es la voz del silencio. En este armario hay un gato encerrado, porque una mujer defendió su derecho.
History tells that during the 100 Years' War, Joan of Arc decided to join the army dressed as a man. Under her leadership, the French troops achieved the victory, and thanks to that, Carlos VII was crowned king. When she was 19 years old, Joan of Arc was illegally prosecuted and accused of being a heretic, and a short time later, she was sentenced to burn in the stake. As Joan of Arc, many women hid their true identity to enter militia and other platforms of religious and scientific life, because access to an education was a privilege reserved to men, and women were confined to housework and taking care of the children. Women slowly realized that they could not afford to financially rely on men, and that their fate was not restricted to raising children, taking care of the house, and accepting submission to the forced requirements of their husbands. These changes have been nourished in the wake of the new costumes of the Western Hemisphere. The insurrection brought as an inevitable consequence changes and achievements for Colombian women. For a period of 30 years, since women obtained their right to vote, Colombian women participation in politics was insignificant and infrequent. Only after the National Constituent Assembly of 1992, with the inclusion of the Gender Quota Law and its consequent regulation, Colombian women started having a strong participation in politics and have reached high leadership positions in the country. In 1988, during the World Congress of the International Federation of Female Lawyers, whose Spanish acronym is FIDA, held in Ghana, Colombia got the presidency. This led the country to organize the next World Conference in 1990 in Cartagena, Colombia. As a result of the Congress, it was established as a fact that women as a group could only get the high government positions that it was entitled to reach if they were given constitutional and legal aid. Therefore, it was consecrated as mandatory that women had to be given positions in publicly free election and removal charges, such as presidential and municipal board, and the FIDA members committed themselves to working in their countries for the adopted resolution to be implemented. One of the resolutions of that Congress was that women had to seek participation in the decision-making levels of the state. Somehow, we had to break the glass ceiling. We could simply not reach the middle management. We had to get there through law, and that instance coincided with the Colombian Constituent. The idea at the moment was, how do we do it? We needed to have in this new constitution an article, one that could help afterwards to include a law that would give women the possibility of participation in these levels of decision at the government stage, taking in mind that Colombia is a presidential regime and large decisions are taken by government cabinets. Lobbying was our card for opening the door to the constituent, because there you can't show up as a John Doe. We simply had to convince the doorman to give us the possibility to enter. And with that purpose, we arrived very early with a pink umbrella. We stood at the door, waiting to see who we could see around, and we asked them, would you help us to see if they let us in? We made demonstrations, went to the public square to make demands, to request that the rights of women should be contemplated within the Constitution of '91. Without these efforts and these voices of women, it would have not been possible to have what we have today in this Constitution. Furthermore, not only we have worked with women, we went to Bogota. We made numerous trips to work with constituents. I remember meetings with Dr. Rodrigo Lloreda and many others. We told them that if they helped us put that subsection in the Constitution, then we were going to support them. And they said yes at the beginning. But we had no warranties, and obviously we always heard things like this. They're here again, these irritating women that do nothing else but annoy and disturb. Because many people say that women look around and think that the way things are is just fine. And that's part of the problem. We say that women need to occupy another space, in personal life, family life, in society, in politics. A great job in favor of women was done in spite of such poor representation through feminine activism and organizations that were around while making contact with constituents and enforcing the rights of women. And in that sense, the spinal cord of the Constitution is the right to gender equality, which is consecrated in Article 13, which reads that there shall not be any kind of sex discrimination, and that the obligation of the state is protecting groups of people who are in conditions of weakness or vulnerability. In accordance with the right to gender equality, it was established in Article 40, since the issue is the political rights of all the people in Colombia, the responsibility of the state to ensure adequate and effective participation of women in charges of public administration in connection with this text. It's a little phrase, but it was very complicated to achieve the inclusion of it in Section 4, because obviously it was a novel theme to be guaranteeing women political participation. I personally worked thoroughly for each time warranty of participation of women in politics was referred. It had to be said to be fair and equitable, not suitable, for the word suitable is weak, and who is to qualify objectively if it is or not? When you talk instead of fair and equitable, it means that half Colombian people who are women, I would venture it's even more than half, have the right to exercise total political representation and also the leadership in public offices. Not to be branded as opportunists, women had to participate in their own right in the campaign, and so they did, challenging political machineries and the Colombian endemic elections fraud. As a vehicle for this effect, Women for Democracy was founded. A new concept with its own political approaches rests to submit national lists for Senate elections in 1991 and to participate in the hard election race with its own cutting-edge ideology, full of programs and solutions to national problems. In just 2 months of political campaigns, Women for Democracy defended with their list the right to participate. They earned support and national recognition and forced political caciques, worried with the fear of losing the female vote, to place women as heads of lists. In the new Congress, women participation increased. 4 Congresswomen became 20. 1 female senator in property in 1990 became 8 in 1991, and 4 in the House of Representatives became 12. The project was studied initially in the House of Representatives. I was in the Congress from 1990 to 1998, and I had to be the presenter. I worked the initiative with Vivian Morales. The goal was the participation of women in the organisms who took decisions of state. This meant that in both the ministries as well as in other bodies in the pyramid of the public sector, 30% of the charges had to be given to women. This is a concept of positive discrimination, which means that for minority groups that are not acknowledged rights, standards should be established, while it occurs naturally in modern societies. The movement that arose from the National Constituent Assembly, the one that achieved the significant participation of women in Congress, had to fight for more than 9 years before the Article 40 was regulated and became a law of the Republic. The road in the Congress was as rough as in the Constituent, only much longer, and finally it was the presenter Vivian Morales who accomplished, more by fatigue and perseverance than anything else, the approval of the Law 581 of 2000. Before the gender quota law, there was a prejudice about women not reaching public charges because she lacked formation and competence. Discussing this law that I prepared for 6 years in the Congress, I achieved the clarification that women didn't reach public charges because of a patriarchal culture, since women were already in college and getting master's degrees, but neither had access to high court or high positions in the leading organisms of the state. And that was gender quota law achieved, women filling those unachievable posts. Today, it's unimaginable having a justice turn without including the name of a woman in it. The Law 581 of 2000 regulates the participation of women in decision levels of different branches of public power, both nationwide, as in regional divisions, provincial and municipal districts. But is this law really being fulfilled? The law has mechanisms. It says that it's a severe lack of discipline for an officer not to give at least the third part to women in directive charges of entities, as well as for the President of the Republic, his governors, mayors, not to comply the legal gender quota requirement. It is a failure of serious misconduct, which means that maintaining such conduct is a reason for destitution. But so far, there is no record of a fired officer in Colombia for that reason. I think it's because the person in charge to applying destitution is the Republic's general attorney, and he definitely has not much interest in gender equity issues. Could we say then that right after the right to vote, the greatest achievement of Colombian women at a legislative level is this law that has allowed to remark this women's role, as well as many others that today get high recognition nationwide and internationally in very significant political charges? I think the next conquest refers to sexual and reproductive rights of women, but it is a very difficult issue in our society for many reasons, and I think that we need more spaces to talk, to discuss the different points of view. There are very mixed and opposite opinions, and we understand them, but I think it needs pondering. It needs a national dialogue to enable women to have better rights regarding that. Women have done many important things, not since the rule was implemented, but much before. For example, the fact of having women studying and preparing themselves. In many university courses, there are more women than men, and this is very important for women have understood their role in society. Women are as well really linked in the private sector. There are many women in higher places, but there is still a serious problem, and it's the salaries inequity. This is another fight we also have to give. Women are increasingly aware that a certain level of gender consciousness is essential to practice political power. Women as Noemí Sanín, Vera Grave, Maria Emma Mejía, Piedad Córdoba, Gloria Ramírez, Gloria Cuartas, Maria Isabel Rueda, Vivian Morales, and Ingrid Betancourt, among other women, who come from different shores of Colombian politics, just share their gender awareness, meaning the values and common interests that women have. I think in the present historic moment of Colombia, which has to do a lot with the peace process to end the war that has been present for many years, women can't be absent. And right there is where women are gathering again, so there is a general proposal that truly involves women and grant them their role, because in these peace talks until now, she has been absent. We think that peace talks without women will not succeed, and the peace process forward or reconciliation without the participation of women will not succeed either. We want to build a peace agenda, a post-conflict agenda, in which there will be a prominence of women. We need to make sure that women are to steer the country towards peace. But it's not enough to have an effective representation of women in the election outlook, but also having a clear moral code where the feminine values, as the ethics of caring, maternal predisposition, and peaceful solutions, have priority over other violent cultural attitudes. In this moment, Colombia should take the decision if it really wants to meet the Millennium Goals of the United Nations of having gender equality, for measures to date have been poor. It doesn't mean they have not been important and taken in good faith. But it makes no sense to ensure that 30% of such charges and that it gets warranted by law, while it's not complied. Because we see the composition of the Senate, and today there is a 22% of women. In the House of Representatives there is an 18%. This means, in spite of the law that came out, reality does not even reflect a 30% of the statistics. That only shows that, as a country, we are far left behind. I wish it was approved in the political reform that on the lists for every man there was a woman, and they have to be both in the first lines, because it's not about putting men first and then a trail of women to do his campaign.
Muchas feministas
Many feminists have addressed in their writings the topic of women not having that libido that men have about power.
la mujer llega a los
A woman gets power, but she does not have the passion of a man who gets intense with power and politics. Let's say women lack ambition in the political sense.
se ha dicho.
This is also part of a formation of culture and care, and less of ambition for power.
Yo creo que ya es parte de
But I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that ambition of having power for the sake of power is the seal of the way men make politics. And I think women should enter politics from another perspective. From various public sector tiers, Colombian women continue battling. An increasing amount of women are working in the leadership of the country without neglecting the purpose of equity. What comes now is an aspiration, that the lists for Congress and public corporations are composed 50-50, half by men and half by women, to get proper representation in the public corporations. For the quota that corporations have, that now only reaches 20%, gets at least to 50%. This will not be accomplished in one period, for there is further need to encourage from the parties the participation of women. They have to be educated for the public matters. Parties find difficult to create the lists because many women are not very related for working with the public. This will be a matter of transition. We hope in 2018 we will have a list formed 2-1-2-1, and hopefully in 2022 a list formed by 50% men and 50% women. According to a report entitled Women in Enterprise Management presented by the ILO, Colombia ranks second place after Jamaica through the ranks of countries with the highest percentage of women in management positions. However, it is estimated that women will be the main source of economic growth in the near future. This is just the beginning, and what's coming for Colombia is great.
De la montaña se escucha la voz de un rayo. Es el relámpago claro de la verdad. En esta vida santa